Okay, hello. The article that I chose is from WSPA 7 News and is titled Downtown Greensville Sees Rise in Property Crimes, Drop in Violent Crimes. So, this article mainly focuses on their crime rates as a whole in Greensville. Their new statistics show that over the past years, their violent crime rates have decreased, which this includes murder, sexual assaults, and other serious offenses. But when it comes to property crimes, it's moving in the complete opposite direction. So this includes motor vehicle theft, which has increased 95%, shoplifting, which has increased 45%, and then burglaries and break-ins are also on the rise. This is more than just simply numbers. It really shows a lot for society. When residents worry about their cars being stolen or their homes being broken into, they're not really going to want to leave their home as much or engage in their community. Although it does mention in the article that a lot of the individuals who did live there don't report feeling unsafe in the actual city or downtown, it does cause a major issue because they don't want to leave their home because it's a bigger concern for, is their home going to get broken into? What is it going to look like when they get home? Is their car going to get broken into? Stuff like that. Although Greensville is making progress into reducing the violent crime rates, this progress is being heavily overshadowed by the major increase in the property crimes. It's important to ensure safety as a whole, making sure that everyday activities aren't putting people at risk. It can really hold a lot of people back and break the trust within a community, kind of as a whole. So this article greatly relates to what I read in chapter 2, where it talked about the property crimes. So it notes that as a society, we recognize the seriousness of violent crimes, but not necessarily property crimes. We don't really think about the impact that it might have on the victims' lives. Although these property crimes refer to taking money or goods without the use of force, it can still cause a lot of destruction to these victims. In fact, three-quarters of all the crimes committed in the United States are property crimes. However, according to the text, there seems to be a steady decrease in property crimes, which showed up until 2019, which I found interesting. I believe it peaked in like the 1950s, and then it was showing a steady decrease until the figure ended at 2019. This makes Greenville's current situation stand out even more because it shows that even if it has been on the rise, especially after 2020, like during COVID, it might go against like the national trends, which also can depend heavily on the location of things. So although evidence is mixed on if hard economic times has an impact on these property crimes, for me personally, I do think that it might, not just because less people might have money or people might lose their jobs, but also if law enforcement or anything like that loses their funding, it can also result for a lot of crimes to kind of go under the radar. Especially the ones that are nonviolent because they're harder to see than something like murder, for example. So they're not as immediate as concern. So lastly, I think it's also important to add some demographics on these articles because, like the text mentioned, these can happen anywhere, but they do use the example of the people over the age of 65 do experience more property crimes than other age groups, and there are many other groups of different property crimes as well for different demographics. So I think it is important because if a particular group is more at risk, providing additional resources can help limit these offenses against them. For example, like for older people over the age of 65 as well, they might not know that they're being targeted for that demographic, but if they did, then they might invest in like a camera system or kind of providing stuff like that to help them. Overall, both the article and the textbook really do highlight the importance to not overlook property crimes simply because they're nonviolent and it's not like, it's not as immediate to see the damage that it's doing, but they do have negative impacts that do heavily affect our society and can damage people's trust, community, safety, and just their everyday life. This Greenville situation really reminds us that keeping people safe requires paying attention to all crimes, no matter how big or how small.